Nuanez now. Watch the show statewide on SWX Montana Television.
I like football!
Now here's your host, Colter Nuanez.
Well, what's up, Montana? Welcome in. Nuanez now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. Happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a great day. I'm the new Jack Weatherman for the 2 to 6 slot. So I've been learning a lot about humidity levels, precipitation levels. There's like 98% humidity in Missoula right now. I was wondering why my skin is so dry. That's why. I don't know. I just had to get that off my chest. Also, I was just at the grocery store on my way here. And the dude in front of me that was checking out, he had 3 2-liters of soda, 2 40 ounces of malt liquor, and a gigantic bag of popcorn. That's it. I feel like he's going to have a hell of an afternoon. It sounds like a great day to me. I don't know where he was going, what he's doing, but they have these huge bags of popcorn at Fresh Market. They're hilarious. I always wanted to get one, but I feel like I'd either get tired of the popcorn or it'd go stale by the time it's all the way done. Anyways, we're going to talk all the way around the Big Sky in men's hoops because we've been doing that in women's hoops for the last couple weeks with our good friend Krista Redpath, and we'll continue that for the first hour of Thursday's show. But we haven't talked that much or that extensively about the men's league. A variety of reasons why, and we'll get into those. Mostly because there's still a lot of mystery in the men's league with the fact there's been so many postponements, cancellations, all of the above, and like the Montana schools, for example, they will have been on a break for, count them up, 11 days by the time they play Thursday, pending that those games do occur, and hopefully that they do. So it's just been sort of stop and start and stop. There's a variety of factors of why we haven't got into it. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the Grizz, because we have not talked that much about Grizz basketball. We talked about them coming out of their great win over Weber State, and they haven't really had a game since then other than the Cat Grizz game, but that was overshadowed by the national championship football game. So a ton to catch up on. Also, it's a Tuesday, so that means it's a Taglieri Tuesday. I was in there at Tag earlier today. Got myself this nice olive oil. Can't wait to try it. Mix it up with some balsamic. Our new guy, Jeff Safford, he's not really new because he's been around. He's been the voice of the Paddleheads before. He's joining us here now at ESPN Missoula. He'll continue calling Paddleheads games once the summer comes around, but he's also going to help us out with some Grizz hockey, some Grizz lacrosse. But he's saying to me earlier when I was eating breakfast, he said, man, there's some great bread places in Missoula. And I never really thought that until I realized it. And he's absolutely right. There is some great bread places in Missoula. So I got myself some sweet oil. I'm going to mix with some balsamic, get the vinegar going. Anyways, we have a $25 gift card for you to Taglieri Delicatessen. So stay tuned for that. Give that away about 4:45. We're also going to go through our Treasure State Stars, have all sorts of different sports and athletes to highlight, including a couple wrestlers. Haven't talked much wrestling yet this winter sports season, but a couple cool stories. This last weekend at Missoula Sentinel, the Jug Beck Classic, which it's funny because the all-class wrestling tournament each year at the Billings Metra is an awesome event. If you've never been, I would say go. As a sports fan, it doesn't matter if you're unfamiliar with wrestling or if you've never been to a meet like that. It's so cool because you have so many mats going at once. There's so much action. You get to see sort of all of the dynamics of Montana culture on display because you have people from Missoula and Billings and also people from Forsyth and Shepherd. So it's just a cool meshing of people from around the state. It's awesome. But all that said, there are several prominent, prestigious wrestling tournaments in the state of Montana. Most wrestling experts, most people that know wrestling would tell you the Jug Beck Classic here in Missoula, which was hosted at Sentinel this last weekend, is the toughest one to win because it is sort of this all-class convergence invitational sort of toward the beginning of the season. It's not close enough to the beginning where people are still getting in condition, though. People are starting to get conditioned. So we're going to highlight some of the great stories out of that and also talk about Jarrett Deegan. What a cool story for him. One of the only 4-time state champions in Montana history. He came back. And we'll talk about a couple other standouts from around the sporting world. Hour number 2, our main man, Brooks Nuanez, going to swing by. We're going to hear from Brooks twice this week, actually. He was in studio earlier today, and we hadn't got a chance, at least on this show, to catch up with him about the FCS National Championship game. So we'll talk about that, plus sort of what's next moving forward for both the Grizz and the Bobcats on the football field. And then, of course, as we do each Tuesday, we have our Montana State Minute. Feature Montana State head men's basketball coach, Danny Sprinkle, so you can stay tuned to that about 4:30. You want to listen to the show, stream the show, your mobile device, your computer, tablet, whatever. You can always do that from our station website, 1029ESPN.com. So happy to have both Andrew Houghton and Jeff Safford on board because we have all sorts of things that now we can collaborate on and improve. And our website is good, but I know that it could be a lot better, so that's one thing we're going to really attack. But you can find the stream there, as well as you can find all our podcasts there as well. And we are going to continue our Grizz Greats podcast series. Stay tuned for that, for what the fall might hold. But in the meantime, if you haven't checked out the Grizz Greats podcast series, you should. We started out with Grizz Greats, the coaching tree, highlighting the just unbelievable, honestly, coaching tree that stems from Judd Heathcote's time at Montana. Heathcote was here in the mid to late 70s, then famously left Montana to head to Michigan State, led the Spartans to their first national championship in 1979 behind the a guy you might have heard of, Magic Johnson. Pretty good run for Judd Heathcote, but all the coaches that came after him were so impactful and rose to such great heights as well. You know, from Jim Brandenburg to Mike Montgomery, Stu Morrill, Blaine Taylor, Don Holst, Larry Kristoviak, Wayne Tinkle, and now Travis DeCure. They all have certain ties that bind. They all have the history of Montana in their backgrounds. Many of them are Montana alums, and it was a phenomenal series to be a part of because I learned so much from those guys, and it's such a rich history. And that history carries on today. And Travis DeCure is trying to get Montana back to that top of the league level, and it seems like they are making progress, at least compared to the last 2 years. So we'll talk about that progress here in a minute. But you can always check out Grizz Greats, the coaching tree. We also have our 2 Grizz football anniversary series podcasts as well. Grizz Greats, the silver anniversary of the 95 national champions, commemorating Montana's first run to the FCS national title. And then this last year, we had a Grizz Greats, the 20th anniversary of the 2001 national champs. So that was a fun one as well. Crazy to think, 20 years since Montana's last football national championship. You can also be a part of the show. Call us, text us. Let us know your thoughts, your questions, concerns, anything like that. 406-888-1029. That's 888-1029. And remember that number because you're going to want it when we start giving away this Taglieri. I also forgot to mention, about 4:30, it's time once again for our Pepsi Youth Sports segment. So our good friend Katie from the YMCA will be down to tell us just all about the various youth activities that they have upcoming for both winter and spring seasons. The YMCA is awesome in the community. So we'll be look forward to hearing from Katie as well. You can also, as always, stream the show on YouTube. It is Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. I'm Colter Nuanez, and we're coming to you from the Northwest Motorsport Studio. You can take back control of the road with a new rig from Northwest Motorsport. Visit nwmsrocks.com. That's nwmsrocks.com to check out the largest inventory of trucks anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. Andrew Houghton from Skyline Sports, as well as our producer here at ESPN Missoula, he has been working on and off covering the Big Sky, or I guess on, in a variety of different capacities covering the Big Sky for a handful of years now, and has been with me on and off for the last 4. And we, for those who've been paying attention, we live together as well. So it is sort of nice when you have a roommate who you don't have to talk into, like, hey, man, let's watch some Idaho, Northern Arizona men's basketball. My old roommate wouldn't have wanted to do that. He would watch the Grizz or the Cats for sure, but he's not trying to watch, middle of the week non-Montana schools. But Andrew and I both, enjoy doing that. We like analyzing the league. It's always fun to get sort of prepped up for what's always a big week in Boise, Idaho. But this year, we've only had a couple games on because of the few games that have been noteworthy, particularly for the Montana schools. We've either been there in person, like you were in Bozeman a couple weeks ago, or I was when Weber State was in town here in Missoula. But it just seems crazy because usually by this point in the year, I will have gone to 18 or 20 games in person and probably watched another 20 on the stream. And I can say in full honesty, I have been to, let me count, I've been to 6 live basketball games so far this year for men's hoops in the Big Sky. Only one time in Bozeman, which is crazy. And I've watched on the stream. Last night I watched a little bit when the Monday Night Football game became kind of a blowout. I watched the end of NAU Idaho, which was totally crazy. You had like a double technical that led to 3 free throws, and then all of a sudden NAU wins by 2 points. It was a wild finish. Also watched a little bit of Southern Utah against Portland State. But other than that, I've probably only watched a handful of games on the stream too. So part of it has just been, I think, football and the success in Montana and sort of the way that overshadows everything in the Big Sky, both in and outside the state. But also there's just a whole bunch of other dynamics from the pandemic to, more than anything, though, I think it's easy to forget because the time-space continuum that we live in now in the COVID world is so weird. It was less than a year ago, more like 6 months ago, that the vast majority of the best players in the Big Sky just bailed. They just left. And so I think that's the other reason why it's been hard to kind of get engaged in this. We have 53 guys transferring out of the league. You don't know anybody on the teams.
Yeah, Coulter, I mean, you normally have anchors going into the season. I mean, guys that we're excited to watch, storylines that we're excited to follow. There was not a lot of that coming into this Big Sky men's basketball season this year, and I'm doing even worse than you, man. I've only been to one game live, and I haven't caught too many of them either. For all the reasons that you mentioned, and you know, I was more of a women's basketball guy in the league, so I've been focusing on that. But yeah, we just didn't have anything to hold on to coming into this season, anything where we could say, man, this is a guy that we need to be watching. This is a question that I have about this team that I want to catch a game of theirs on the stream to answer, because we didn't have any specific questions about this team. We were just asking general questions because we didn't know anything about them.
Well, it starts with Eastern Washington, who was one of the better Big Sky teams that I've covered over the last 10 or so years, and they showed really well last year in the NCAA tournament against Kansas. Kansas just had too much firepower at the end. But they were so fun to watch, not only because of the talent of their players and because of the system that they ran, but also because of just their outlandish antics. I know Shantae Leggins, former Eastern Washington coach, it drove most of the people in the league crazy. I mean, there's the infamous scene I wrote about on Skyline last year when they were in Bozeman, and Shantae is doing his flap the wings like the eagle, like he does, and he knocks over a cup of water onto Media Row at Brick Breeden Fieldhouse, and it goes all over the laptop of 2 of the media relations guys from MSU, and they are both let's say veterans of the Big Sky Conference, and not really having those sort of shenanigans. So they were very displeased at the antics, and it became sort of a little argument. But I got the tactic, though, and I thought it was beautiful, and I thought it was hilarious, and I thought it was entertaining. But then after the season, the exodus in Eastern Washington was profound. Shantae Leggins leaves for Portland, and Tanner Groves and his younger brother Jacob Groves out to Oklahoma. Michael Matthews, who's one of the best underclassmen in the league, follows Shantae to Portland. And then all of a sudden the dust settles, and they have nobody that I can even, nobody really of note on their roster remaining. I mean, they had 8 of their top 9 guys in their rotation leave, which was just crazy. And so when that's the scenario for the Big Sky champs, then it sort of comes down the line, and everybody had attrition. But there is a couple schools that didn't, and that's what I want to get to here in a minute, is why there's not a little bit more of an anchor feeling around a Southern Utah, because they have 9 seniors and they have some of the best returners in the league. But I also think there's a dynamic there that they're leaving, so it's hard to say that they have any anchor in it, even if they do have the most veteran roster in the league.
Well, they're leaving, and the other thing with Southern Utah is Southern Utah hasn't been that team that we've followed for years and years and years. Like, we saw that team at Eastern Washington get built up because they were always in it. They were always there in the late stages of the Big Sky tournament. Same in a school like Northern Colorado. We sort of get a sense of the progression of those rosters at Northern Colorado, or at a school like Montana.
Sure.
Montana State, Weber State. Southern Utah has just not come out of nowhere because we always knew they had talent, but they've only started putting it together these last couple of years. And then, like you said, they're out. So the length of time that we've been paying attention to them and the stories that have gotten built up with them, just hasn't been as strong as some of these other teams. Here's what I'm saying when I'm looking at the standings, though, Coulter.
Yeah.
For all of the changes and the people leaving and, of course, people coming in, the standings look like any other year. The standings look like you might have expected
It's exactly
if you just picked them at the beginning of the year. I mean, it doesn't look like there are a lot of surprises on the women's side. Men's side, man, it's pretty chalk so far.
Because of the departures of so many players, it was Eastern that had so many of the headlining players. Because like Northern Colorado and Idaho both had almost as many players enter the transfer portal, but none of those players were headlining players. Most of the guys from Northern Colorado was just like the bottom half of their roster. It's the same thing with Idaho. I mean, even though Idaho was god-awful last year, they only won one conference game. None of the guys that left were of any impact. So it is funny because you look at the standings right now, and Weber State sits atop the standings at 5-1. Southern Utah is there at 4-1. Northern Colorado 3-1. They got Montana and Montana State tied at 4-2. Eastern Washington 3-2. For those wondering, Tanner Groves, who was the Big Sky Conference MVP last year at Eastern Washington and was a monster against Kansas, had 33 points, which was, I believe, the second most ever by a Big Sky player in an NCAA tournament game. Groves is at Oklahoma now. He's averaging 13.5 and 6.5. So, a lot of times we see guys like Holland Woods, who was an awesome player at Portland State, transfer to Arizona State, and he gets, 2 buckets a game because he's playing 9 minutes. And we see guys transfer up a lot. Well, not a lot. It's not actually that common. It's not nearly as common as the belly-aching coaches want you to believe. But most of the time we see guys transfer up, and they don't produce at a high level. And Tanner Groves is producing like the exact same level he was when he was at Eastern Washington, which I think is amazing.
It's super impressive. I'm just happy to see, that beard pop up in my Twitter timeline here and there still, because you got old Big Sky beat writers who will retweet when he has a big game, or he'll pop up on some national guys' radars here and there when he has a big game. So that's what I'd like to see,
No question. One other piece of noteworthy, something else noteworthy that sort of got glossed over, and I'm not begging for anybody to give me attention or read one of my stories, but it was an incredibly fun story for me to write. And there was no real place and time for it other than Eastern Washington being in the NCAA tournament. But I was able to go to the NCAA tournament last year, and I went to Indianapolis for 5 days, and I watched 14 games in 5 days and also watched at least 8 other games that were happening in Indy while I was there. We just happened to be at a restaurant or at our Airbnb or whatever. But it was an awesome and great pleasure to do that with Riley Corcoran. It was very fun. But I wrote a 5-part long-form story about it. And my favorite part of it, though, was writing about the Groves brothers and sort of the Twitter mania that was. And we embedded a bunch of the tweets from across the country. But, Jackie Moon and Napoleon Dynamite, like, what a hilarious combination. And because of the COVID situation last year, media passes were so hard to come by, and it was such a challenge. So we actually didn't get media credentials. That said, Eastern Washington was good enough. I mean, they knew that I had covered them all year long, and I'd covered about 7 of their games before. So they hooked me up with tickets in the parents section. So we were actually in the parents section with Jacob Davidson's parents, who ended up transferring to Cal Poly, and Tanner Groves' parents. And that was just endlessly fun to just watch those parents, cheering on their kids in the big dance. So very cool. It is Nuanez now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. I'm Coulter Nuanez, taking you around the Big Sky in men's hoops because we haven't done much of that for a variety of reasons, which we've gotten to right now. We've been getting to, throughout this show. But here's a look at some of the leaders in the Big Sky Conference. And I think that's another thing, is that we're only now starting to get familiar with a great many of these guys that are some of the top scorers. So right now, Dalen Kuntz is leading the league in scoring at 19.1 points per game overall. That actually, to me, even though it might seem like a surprise, because not only is Northern Colorado one of the better teams in the league this year, but they also feature Bodie Hume, who's one of the most proven players in the league, and maybe the guy, if you saw Northern Colorado as a leading scorer, you'd think Hume might be the guy. That said, I thought Kuntz was one of the biggest underachievers in the league last year. I thought he should have been an all-league player. He's a transfer from Colorado. He is really sweet. I mean, he's like a 6'4" point guard with great skill. And, I watched him baseline dunk on the Grizz one time last year. I was like, woofta. And he lit up the Grizz in Missoula one of the games. And so I thought going down the stretch when he was nowhere close to an all-conference player, that was perplexing. So for those who've seen him, maybe not a surprise. But then you look at some of the other guys atop the league. I mean, Jalen Cohn from Northern Arizona, a Virginia Tech transfer. Kobe McEwen from Weber State. a Marquette transfer. Linton Akeles from Eastern Washington. I can't remember where he transferred from, but he's certainly a transfer as well. So a lot of the best guys, they're guys that we're just now getting familiar with.
No doubt, and that's fun. It's fun to see these guys come into the league and just act like they've been here before and take to it so well. The guy who's really impressed me, who you mentioned, Jalen Cone at Northern Arizona, and he hit the big shot in their crazy game last night, which was just, I caught the highlight. I wasn't watching the game. Pull up three, go into his right. Didn't look like he had much space. Got it off. I really like him, and he's one of the best shooters that's come into the league recently. But yeah, I mean, as sort of bittersweet as it is to not have a lot of the names that you were expecting to come back into the league that maybe you followed for a couple years, it is great to see these new guys come in as well and sort of learn about their games, watch them play a little bit.
Cone has a fascinating story, too. Fascinating is maybe not the right word. An atypical story, because he was a guy that played at Virginia Tech. He's from Walkertown, North Carolina, so not exactly in Northern Arizona's recruiting territory, so to speak. But he's a guy that started games at Virginia Tech. He played in 47, started 5. He averaged 9.5 points per game last year. So he's not just some bottom of the bench ACC guy. He was a starting player for Virginia Tech. And he also famously played with Bam Adebayo of the Heat, as well as Jason Tatum and De'Aaron Fox. So that neck of the woods, really talented players, obviously. I mean, Walkertown, North Carolina. But there's also the element of Jalen Cone landing at Northern Arizona because Shane Burkar hired one of his relatives to be a director of ops. So that's an interesting fold, too. That's been happening more often in college basketball. Like, a lot of people last year were wondering, how did Cade Cunningham end up at Oklahoma State? Well, because Oklahoma State hired Cade Cunningham's father as an assistant. How did Evan Mobley end up at USC? Because they hired, I believe, his brother to be an assistant. It's a new trend in college hoops. It's one of those things where I think you can get all sideways about it, but it ain't going anywhere, and it's actually like a tactful way to skirt some rules. So, you know, it's just sort of crazy that it's happening at Northern Arizona. Like, this isn't just North Carolina. This is Northern Arizona.
Right. That was the Porters, too, right? The Porter brothers.
Yep.
I remember going all the way back. You said it's a new thing. I think that's been happening for a long time. Like, didn't Danny Manning go to Kansas because, like, Larry Brown hired his dad?
Yeah, it's certainly been a thing forever. I mean, it's just like with the guys that got in trouble during the wiretapping scandal. Well, those guys just removed the 1 degree of separation you needed to make it be legal. Like, everybody's always had a guy who's got a guy. You know what I mean? Like, there's always the AAU coach who's got a guy who's got a guy. Like, that's how it always works in college basketball. That's what it is. That's what it's been forever. So, you know, it is just interesting, though, when that sort of stuff matriculates its way all the way to NAU, though.
For sure. But it's been, you know, good for NAU. I guess the other thing that I was looking at with the standings and not seeing too much change from a typical year that's just interesting to me is, you know, we thought we were going to have a lot of upheaval with the pandemic, and we've talked about this for football recruiting where kids get squeezed out and kids drop down from the FBS maybe, and some kids get missed out at the high school level because there's not as many spaces. And we talked about that as sort of an opportunity for some of these lower down teams in the league to maybe make a splash, to increase their level of talent because they're getting some of those kids that fall through the cracks. Well, here in Big Sky Men's Hoops, I thought it was the same thing, but we've seen the established teams and the established programs negotiate that chaos better than anybody and keep their places. And that's why it's sort of cool to see those programs. You know, Weber State with Randy Ray, and they've been doing their thing for forever.
Yeah.
They're in first place. I mean, the Montana schools are right up there. Northern Colorado, which has been one of the strongest programs in the league.
Right.
Still right up there despite all of this potential upheaval that I think we saw with the transfer portal and the pandemic and everything.
Analyzing Weber State and Montana, because let's be honest, no matter whatever changes in the Big Sky Conference, the road to the Big Sky title goes through Weber State and Montana every year, period. That's what it is. I think that since the Big Sky started in 1963, I think Weber has 20 or 21 titles and Montana has like 14 or 15. So you're talking about almost all of the titles, like 35 of the 60 titles have been Weber or Montana. And I do think, though, it's interesting because John Calipari sort of set the bar early with this one and done. And there were certain coaches that you either proclaimed or you assumed would never go down that road. Roy Williams proclaimed it. Mike Krzyzewski, you assumed it. Not so much. Mike Krzyzewski went the other way. In the Big Sky, when it comes to transfers, I always thought that it would never be Montana that relied heavily on transfers, but Travis DeCuire's best teams were spearheaded by a group of transfers. I mean, they had great high school players too, like Michael Ogine and Bobby Moorhead, but Ahmad Rory, transferred from Oregon. Jamar Coe, transferred from Cal State Fullerton. Donovan Dorsey, transferred from Washington. They had transfers, so that was sort of ironic. And then Randy Ray is very much like the Mike Krzyzewski of Big Sky basketball. A much, we're talking scaled here for sure. But Coach Ray is a 5-time Big Sky Coach of the Year, and he's the all-time leader in wins in the league. He's been at Weber for 16 years. Never thought he was going to be the guy that was just revamping his entire roster through transfers. Yet here we are, and Weber is transfer you. Their starting lineup is, they had 7 transfers last year. They got 6 more this year.
Well, it's an important lesson, Coulter. The strength of these programs is not because they keep doing what they're doing.
That's
the
right.
strength of these programs is that they can adapt, and that's true everywhere. They can see where the prevailing winds of change are going. They can follow. They're not stuck in their ways, right? That's what builds a strong program, and that's sort of the point that I'm getting at, where it's cool to see these programs who have been around for so long adapt and still maintain their place at the top.
It is so true. And also, not to completely go into the full nuance of it all, but Travis DeCuire's transfer operation was a little bit different than these others because it wasn't during this era of the transfer portal where you can transfer, you're immediately eligible, there's no consequence for transferring whatsoever, one and done, you're in, you can play, all of that. So the rosters are so revamped. Like Ahmad Rory came to Missoula and was on the practice squad for a year. He had to cut his teeth against the Grizz before he got an opportunity to play. Like that was the whole thing when Coach DeCuire first got here was you had this whole group of guys sitting on the end of the bench. What's the Grizz going to be like when those guys aren't sitting out because of what used to be a mandatory rule that no longer exists? More Grizz hoops a little later on because we're also going to talk some Bobcat hoops. Danny Sprinkle will join us about 5:30. We got to get out because our good friend Katie Crutch from the YMCA is here. She's going to tell us about all of the youth sports programs available through the YMCA. It's our youth sports segment presented by Pepsi Cola of Missoula. Keep it right here. It's ESPN Radio. Paul Ryan is a name that's been synonymous with law around the Garden City for decades. And Paul is excited to announce the expansion of his firm to Ryan, Holloway, and Miller. Paul Ryan, Nate Holloway, and Angie Miller have a fierce love for their community, and they want to help you with any of your legal needs. From auto accidents to medical malpractice to wrongful death or any criminal defense, Ryan, Holloway, and Miller should be your first call. When it comes to personal injury or criminal defense, call Ryan, Holloway, and Miller today. Ryan, Holloway, and Miller, your Montana attorneys.
Northwest Motorsports Anniversary Sales Event is on now with discounts on every vehicle in stock. That's right, we're celebrating 13 years of trucks, and more trucks with huge discounts on your favorite 4x4 trucks, lifted trucks, and diesel trucks. Visit NWMSRocks.com for the largest inventory of trucks in the Northwest. Celebrate a new year of savings with discounts on Toyota trucks, GMC trucks, Chevy trucks, Ford trucks, Ram trucks for a limited time only at Northwest Motorsport.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires, introducing the new Backcountry AT2 for a quieter ride with improved performance in wet conditions. Because when it comes to keeping your family safe on the road this winter, the right tires help you feel prepared for anything.
Mom, hey Mom.
Well, almost anything. Plus, save up to $130 when you buy Quatrac tires with financing. Les Schwab Tires. Limited time offer. Terms and conditions apply. See leschwab.com/sale for details.
The world of real estate is always evolving. That's more true now than ever. If you are a longtime Missoulian that is looking to upgrade or downsize, it might be the best time yet to sell. If you're in the position to buy something new, today might be the best time to buy. And no matter what questions you have when it comes to residential or commercial real estate, Mike Nugent and the professionals at Berkshire Hathaway in Missoula have your answers. To find out what Mike can do for you, give him a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Like most Montanans, we love a good steak. And because we're the Montana Club, we take the steaks we serve very seriously. We're confident to say that our custom-grilled steaks are as good a steak as you're going to get. Now we're proud to add regularly sourced, naturally raised Castle Rock bison ribeye to our selection. And remember, the Montana Club steak entrees include the sides. Come into the Montana Club today for an unrivaled steak experience. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Montana brings a variety of reasons to get outdoors. Gear up at Bob Ward's Sports and Outdoors, Montana's largest sporting goods retailer. For over 105 years, Bob Ward's has been committed to providing outstanding customer service, merchandise selection, and value. Bob Ward's has every brand and everything you need to run, climb, hunt, hike, camp, fish, ski, paddle, everything you do outdoors. Open 7 days a week in Missoula, Bozeman, Butte, Helena, and Hamilton. Or online 24/7 at bobwards.com. Gear up at Bob Ward's, a Montana tradition of adventure since 1917.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Shockwaves emerged from the mining city on Monday with two huge decisions at the annual Montana High School Association meetings. Hello, I am Colter Nuanez. Among a myriad of decisions, the MHSA voted to add shot clocks to all classifications of varsity and sub-varsity basketball across the state for prep hoops. And the MHSA also announced the addition of baseball as a sport. Representatives from the high schools all across Montana met in person at the Copper King Hotel in Butte to discuss and vote on a number of issues, but the two proposals that drew the most attention were certainly baseball and shot clock. Since neither was an MHSA bylaw, both proposals required a simple majority and each passed in overwhelming fashion on Monday. Shot clocks and baseball are both planned to begin during the 2022-2023 academic school year. In Big Sky Conference hoops, a slew of makeup games played out on Monday across the league. In Bozeman, the Montana State women posted a 79-69 win over Idaho after taking 16 days off because of COVID protocols. In her first game since January 1st, Darian White scored 21 points and dished out 4 assists as MSU moved to 3-2 in league play. In the other Big Sky women's game Monday, Eastern Washington drilled Portland State 68-44. On the men's side, Northern Arizona emerged with a wild 74-72 win over Idaho in Flagstaff. Weber State drilled Idaho State 78-61, and Southern Utah ripped Portland State 86-76.
This 102.9 ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
What's up, Montana? Welcome back. Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. I'm Colter Nuanez, coming to you from the Northwest Motorsports Studio. Find amazing winter savings in Northwest Motorsport. You can visit nwmsrocks.com for the largest selection of lifted trucks, diesel trucks, and off-road capable vehicles. They have the largest inventory of trucks anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. When I have the time and the creativity, I've been trying to cater the playlists, some themes to it sometimes. A lot of times it's catered to the guests. A lot of times it's catered to a theme of the day, or maybe just how I'm feeling. But I saw a hilarious tweet today on Twitter, and it was a stack of cassette tapes, and it was these 6 albums that had all been released in the span of 1 month back in 1991, so a full 30 years ago, one of which was Pearl Jam, which we're listening to, 10. This is one of the hit songs off that album, but also is the Black Album from Metallica, Blood, Sex, Sugar Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nevermind by Nirvana, and a couple as a Soundgarden album and a Guns N' Roses album. So pretty fun. We'll be playing those songs for you throughout the rest of the show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on a Tuesday. Hope you're having an outstanding start to your week. Happy now, like we do once a month, for our Pepsi Youth Sports segment. We just feature people and activities around the community you can get your kids involved in. And now we're happy to be joined in studio by Katie Groch from the YMCA. She is the director of youth sports there at the Y. Katie, thank you so much for being here. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Doing great.
Well, first of all, just tell us about the YMCA in general, because I think that people of a certain age remember always the YMCA was like the primary sponsor of all youth sports. Now there's so many different clubs and everything to get your kids in, but you guys are still such a pillar in the community. But the Y does a lot more than just youth sport league facilitation. So just tell us about the Y in general, because it's such a great part of any community, but particularly here in Missoula.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is we're a nonprofit and cause-driven organization, and so all the programs that we do, we want them to strengthen our community. So whether that's kids learning sportsmanship and then becoming, good little people through sports, all the way to childcare and providing infant care for families, programs for the elderly to come in and exercise, or even just that social component for people. I think that was one thing we really found over the last 2 years.
For sure.
People need people. And so, all the programs that we're offering are chances for either adults to come in and have interaction with one another, or kids in summer camps, kids in after school care. So we just want to have programs that are there for the community.
Let's talk about the kid element of this, though. I'm sure that there's plenty of signups going and upcoming and things that are going on. So just tell us about some of the things you guys got going on for all the kiddos in the community.
Yeah, we are just about to start our 4th through 6th grade basketball league. We didn't get to have that last year during COVID, and so it was really fun having kids back in the gym for 2nd and 3rd grade this last November, and we're excited to do the same for those 4th through 6th graders. There's still a few teams with spots available. A lot of the teams are getting full. We do still need a couple volunteer coaches, so if you're into the sport and you want to be a part of it, we would love to have you.
That led me right into what I was going to ask you next. How do people get involved in coaching? Because I do think that so many people that are listening to this right now are of the adult age. This is great to know for your kids' schedules, but also maybe you don't have kiddos, but you want to get involved. This is a really fun way to do it.
Yeah, this is a great way. If you love the sport, basketball, soccer, we have a variety of small clinics too of other sports. If you want to stay involved and help teach others about the sport, the Y is a great place to get started. It's a good resume builder if you want to get into coaching. Obviously, it's great if you can coach at the middle school or high school level, but that's a pretty big time commitment too.
Totally.
So if you're looking to coach, most of our teams are doing 6-week seasons. They have 1 practice per week, 1 game on the weekend. Basketball, that's Friday nights or Saturday afternoons. Soccer, that's Sunday afternoons. So if that's something that you can fit into your schedule, that's something that we're always looking for to kind of help these kiddos have a great season.
Katie Gruch joining us here on Nuanez now. She's the Director of Youth Sports at the YMCA. This is our youth sports segment presented by Pepsi Cola of Missoula. Pepsi Cola Missoula, proud supporter of youth athletics across the Garden City and across the state of Montana. Anything else that people could do to get involved? Or I'm sure that there's a certain element of cost to all of this, and I know that sometimes that's a barrier for entry for people. So is there any assistance in that realm, or how do you guys go about maybe assisting people that maybe don't have the resources to participate?
Yeah, we try really hard to make our programs accessible. We want every kid to have the opportunity to play sports. We see the importance of that, and so we want kids to get out there and play. But if our costs are too much for people, we do offer financial assistance, and that information is all on our website, ymcamissoula.org. And then it's a pretty quick and simple application process, and we try to help people out as much as we can. We're going to be kicking off our annual support campaign tomorrow, and all of those funds that we receive through that campaign go towards scholarships for kids and families, whether that's to let a kid play soccer for the first time, or a family that needs assistance with childcare after school or during working hours. All of that money raised in the annual campaign goes to financial assistance for people in Missoula.
Those of us who love sports and that grew up playing sports, that's why I love my job, because it's not just about the competition on the field. It's about so many of the opportunities, so many of the lessons, and I just can't even imagine my life without the impact sports has had, almost completely aside from the competition or the score or anything like that. But I'm sure you guys have done extensive studies just on the impact that sports can have on kids. So, I mean, there's so many different positives, and I'm sure most people listening know some of them. But, I mean, I'm sure you guys have found it that it is so beneficial for kids to be involved in stuff from a young age.
Yeah, and with our programs, we first want kids to fall in love with the game. There's hopefully going to be a time and a place where they're playing varsity sports, but I always tell our coaches that today's not that day, and if they're going to stick with it, they need to love the game first. And so we want kids to get fundamental skills and all of those benefits, but also just that strong community piece of kids playing with their buddies and making new friends from other schools, and kind of that friendly competition vibe that you can compete against somebody for 60 minutes and then at the end of the day still have respect for one another. And I, again, with all the things that we missed out on during the pandemic, I think that just getting kids back on the field and exercising and just kind of the lightheartedness of sport was something that we really missed, and we're really happy to be getting back into.
It is true, too. You never know how you might have lifelong friendships that stem from this. I was actually in Frisco, Texas at the FCS National Championship football game 2 weekends ago, and the guys I hung out with Saturday night were guys I played YMCA basketball with. But we didn't go to the same school, and then we didn't go to the same high school or anything like that, but we had always stayed in touch since we were like 8 years old, and here we are 30 years later down in Texas hanging out. So it can be an entry point to lifelong friendships. Kate Groots joining us here on Nuanez Now from the Missoula YMCA. She's the director of youth sports. It's our youth sports segment presented by Pepsi Cola. YMCAMissoula.org is the website. You can find everything there. Anything else that's important that maybe you wanted to add, Katie?
Yeah, a few of the other things we've got coming up. Next week, we start our rookie sports classes. Those are for preschool kids, just an introduction to sports. They're adorable and fun to watch. We also will be starting our 3rd and 4th grade volleyball clinics, followed by 5th and 6th grade volleyball. And then starting February 1st, we will have registration open for spring soccer. That season runs mid-April to the end of May, but registration will be open February 1st.
All sorts of great things to get your kids involved in, or maybe you don't even have any kids, you just want to go help out. There's all sorts of opportunities for everybody in the community. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
ESPN Radio, Nuanez Now. How about some of the top individual performances from across the state? Also, how about some free sandwiches? We got some Taglieri Deli for you, and I got my Treasure State Stars for the week. Keep it right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Buying or selling a home can be an intimidating task. Brent Wahlberg and the Wahlberg team of Windermere Real Estate are here to make you feel comfortable no matter where you're at in the process. The official realtors of Grizzly Athletics have more than 4 decades of experience in Western Montana. Brent and his team can not only find you your perfect home or buyer, but they can also teach you about the great city of Missoula and its tradition-laden sports teams. The Wahlberg team works as a family to help fulfill your real estate needs all over Western Montana. If you need help with residential, land, investment, or commercial, give Brent Wahlberg and the Wahlberg team a call today. Part of the glory of building a business comes from leaving a legacy to ensure your business continues thriving into the future. Have you asked yourself lately, what is your plan? Forming a personalized business succession plan is essential to know the passion you put into your business will carry on. Nick Tabor at Westpac Wealth is here to help you navigate all your business succession and retirement planning needs. Give Nick a call at 728-6699 and keep the spirit of possibility vibrant while making your future more tax efficient with a personalized business succession and retirement plan for you. Whether you're in the restaurant business or you just want to host any big event, J&V Restaurant Supply can make sure you have everything you need. J&V Restaurant Supply is your home for everything kitchen. Whether you're a bear or a bobcat, an eagle or a Scotty, J&V Restaurant has everything you might need. They have locations in Bozeman, Billings, and Great Falls. If you can't make it in, J&V also has a great website, jvrestaurant.com. Get everything you need for your next event at J&V, your restaurant specialists. The rush of ripping a new pack of trading cards is hard to match. If you want to recapture the nostalgia of your youth, invest money in a worthwhile hobby, or find a healthy activity for your kids, come check out Zootown Sports Cards. Open from noon until 6, Tuesday through Friday, and on Saturday from 10 to 6, Missoula's premier sports trading card shop carries all the products you need to start or bolster your collection. Located at 102 South Avenue East, across from Doran Blazer Field, Zootown Sports Cards, where the rush of the rip is real. Missoula's premier sports trading card shop.
Papa, what happened to the TV?
Cable prices went through the roof. I had to dump the cable.
All you had to do was call Eagle Satellite at 406-728-9999 and get Dish TV for $57.99 and internet for $50.
Okay, I will. 406-728-9999. Can I get Dish TV for $57.99 and internet for $50? And it's installed free? Fantastic.
Call Eagle Satellite, 728-9999.
Offer expires 4/13/22. Internet not a Dish product. Price does not include locals. Antenna optional.
Florence Coffee Chai satisfies just right when the winter months come to Montana. Black tea with spices, steamed milk, and a touch of sweet combine into a soothing, full-bodied blend. Whether it's spiced, vanilla, chocolate, apple, or even no sugar-added vanilla, we have a chai waiting for you at any Florence Coffee location. And be sure to visit us at florencecoffeeco.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Nuanez Now on ESPN Radio.
New blood joins this earth. Quickly he
It's so crazy to think about just the arc of life in general, but specifically when it comes to creative people and the decisions that they make and the way that certain forks in the road just determine destinies for better or for worse. Amazing. I mean, let's say Metallica, who you're listening to right now, never sits down with Bob Rock. They never sit down with a true polished producer. And they just stay as a sort of thrasher speed metal band like they were in the mid-1980s. Would I even know who Metallica was? Would anybody? I mean, I know that they still have a sort of niche because they are, virtuoso musicians. Even if you're not into hardcore heavy metal, like every version of Metallica, they are phenomenal musicians. But would we know, though? Because that's what happened. They had cut several albums and they were sort of fringe stars, but then they sat down with Bob Rock and bam, the Black Album, 25 million copies, playing the biggest concerts in the world. And you never know. You never know how one decision can change you. But also, it's crazy to think that some people think Metallica were sellouts for doing that. And it certainly laid out the path for the rest of their careers. It's Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. I'm Colter Nuanez coming to you from the Northwest Motorsport studio. Northwest Motorsport has the largest inventory of trucks anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. You can check it out online at nwmsrocks.com. Take back control of the road with a new rig from Northwest Motorsport. Today's playlist, the theme, January of 1991, when the albums Pearl Jam's 10, the Black Album by Metallica, Blood, Sex, Sugar, Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nevermind by Nirvana, Bad Mother Finger by Soundgarden, and Use Your Illusion 2 by Guns N' Roses. All those albums came out the exact same month, 1991. So we're playing various tracks from those. Hope you're enjoying it. I love the music part of this show. It's one of my favorite parts of the show. It's funny because I dreamt of, as a little kid, of being a newspaper sports writer and a rock music DJ. That's the other thing that's so crazy about life is the way that, first of all, it's so long and you never know who you're going to cross paths with. But when I was a little kid growing up in Missoula, I used to love listening to Craig Johnson on the radio. He was the guy that was running the rock station here in town at the time, and he had a very famous and popular morning show. I used to listen to him all the time when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. And then when I get into radio for the first time in my early 30s, who is one of the guys who's hosting the morning show on The Trail, our sister station, 103.3 The Trail? Craig Johnson. Surreal. And now I call him a friend. So cool. Gotta love it. But anyways, I never would have imagined I would be an ESPN radio guy. I always thought I would either be a newspaper writer forever. That went south in a hurry. or maybe spinning some discs on the rock station. But instead, here we are talking sports around the great state of Montana each and every weekday here on ESPN Radio. I was kicking it in Tagliari Deli earlier today. What a cool place. I got myself some deluxe olive oil. Can't wait to try it. They also have such a great pasta selection. They have some really cool things that I can't really describe you could find anywhere else but there. Like they have these really cool pickled vegetables, like pickled onions and pickled asparagus. They also have some pretty specialty pasta sauces. But mostly, you go to Tagliari Deli because of the sandwiches. They have some of the best sandwiches you're going to find anywhere in the state of Montana. And we have a $25 gift card as part of Tagliari Tuesday for you. Give us a call right now. Caller number 5, 406-888-1029. That's 888-1029. Call us right now. Caller number 5. We got a $25 gift card for you to Tagliari Delicatessen, best sandwiches you're going to find anywhere in the city of Missoula. Tag is also awesome because you can order online. You can go to TagliariDelicatessen.com, or you can text Tagliari. That's Tagliare. That's tag, liar with an E, Tagliari to 33733. And you can text right there, put your order in. All of it pretty cool that they have this text to order now. This is new. I just got the card right down when I was just down there. So call us right now, 406-888-1029 for your chance to win some Tagliari. And if you don't win, go check them out anyways. Order ahead online, TagliariDelicatessen.com, or text Tagliari to 33733. Tagliari Deli, proudly presenting Tagliari Tuesday each and every Tuesday here on Nuanez Now. ESPN Radio. Let's dive into our Treasure State Stars. Treasure State Stars, I highlight some of the best individual performances from around the state of Montana. Sometimes it's teams too, but usually just notable accomplishments by Montanans from each week. And Treasure State Stars proudly presented by Parkside Credit Union. Parkside Credit Union has so many perks. You can check out Parkside Credit Union's online financial education platforms. They'll help you stay safe and get smart about saving and making money. Parkside Credit Union is also the best place to get a loan in Western Montana because Parkside Credit Union loves to say yes. Our Treasure State Star number 1 for the week, the Montana High School Association, period. They had their huge convention yesterday. A lot of stuff to talk about, but they have the approval for both shot clock for varsity and sub-varsity levels of basketball throughout the state. Every level of hoops in the state of Montana is going to now have a shot clock. There's going to be hiccups. It's going to be a really tough transition at first, and you think, why? All you have to do is press a button once every 35 seconds. How could that be tough? There's going to be issues training people. There's going to be issues getting people to do it, all that. But I'm not here to dwell on the immediacy of the growing pains that are going to happen from the shot clock. I'm here to talk about how much better this is going to make the product. I've covered sports in Washington and Idaho where they have shot clocks. It's significantly better, I promise you. Once they get it all smoothed out, it is going to be so much better for the product and the fans. And again, they will be speed bumps, but who cares? And also the addition of baseball. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow on the show. Our guy Andrew Houghton is actually a big baseball guy. Played baseball here at Montana for a little while, the club program with the Grizz, and follows baseball pretty good. But just the dynamic, because he grew up in a place where there was high school baseball as well as traveling teams. I grew up in a place where we basically had to make our own barnstorming team if we wanted to figure out how to play after we were 16. And if we didn't want to play 100 games in the summer with an American Legion squad. So we'll dissect all that as well. But good job by the MHSA for both the addition of shot clocks and baseball. Added opportunity and refining of a product is certainly a good thing, and both of those things occurred with that approval yesterday. Treasure State Star number 2, this guy will join us later on this week. He's been on the show several times before, and I'm going to keep calling him this because I just think it's the dang truth. This is the best athlete in the state of Montana, and certainly the one that you don't know about as much as you should. Even if you do know about him, you should know more because he's an amazing, amazing runner. It's Duncan Hamilton from Montana State. He's a Bozeman native. This dude ran 3:56 and change in the mile over the weekend. That was, at the time he ran it, 2 other guys went under 4 throughout the weekend. But at the time he ran it was the fastest time in the United States of America. Still the fastest time in the Big Sky, the fastest time in the history of Montana State, and one of the faster times in the history of this conference, which is in the Big Sky. I would actually argue in the Big Sky, the thing the Big Sky has the most prestige in on a national level is men's distance running. Because of Northern Arizona, Southern Utah, but also because of Montana State. I mean, you talk about, and Weber State has great distance programs as well. So many schools in the Big Sky at altitude, so it makes sense. But Duncan Hamilton's one of the best runners in the United States. He was in the Olympic trials last summer, and he did not just compete. He showed out. He did well. He is a multiple-time Big Sky champion and a guy who qualified for nationals in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. And now during indoor season, he's ripping it up. So a great job by him. Very fun to cover, very fun to follow. And he'll join us a little later on this week to just tell us what it's like now. He's not kind of the up-and-comer anymore. He's now a junior. He's kind of the marked man. What's that like as one of the distance running aficionados, not only in the Big Sky Conference, but in the world of college track? Treasure State Star number 3, Jarrett Deegan. This is pretty cool, actually. Deegan, for those who have been following along, was one of the, I think there's been 32 4-time state champion wrestlers in Montana. I might actually have to fact check that. Maybe Andrew can fact check that for me. 4-time state champion wrestlers in the state of Montana. But it's been not very many. It's a very rare accomplishment and a very impressive accomplishment. But Jared Deegan was one of those 4-time state champs. During his time at Belgrade High School, he was utterly dominant, 168-8. He won 4 straight Class A championships, and that helped earn him a full ride to Virginia Tech. He then transferred to Iowa State, which is one of the top programs in the country, and he's now participating in his 6th and final year because he got last year sort of impeded by the pandemic. Excuse me. But this is very cool. I don't know how they possibly swung this. I've never really even heard of this, but what an opportunity for him. So, as a lot of people that are listening know, the Frontier Conference, particularly Montana State Northern up in Havre, as well as Providence and Great Falls, have really good wrestling programs, like national caliber at the NAIA level. Well, somehow there was a triangular that featured Iowa State, MSU Northern, and Providence. I'm not actually sure if the entire Iowa State team was there or if it was just Deegan, but this took place in Belgrade. So Deegan, as a multiple-time All-American at Iowa State, is in his final year. He gets to wrestle at his old high school gym against guys from MSU Northern and Providence. So that's pretty cool. I'd never really heard of something like that. So a cool return home for Jarrett Deegan, and surely a cool moment for him and his family. Deegan, by the way, he pinned Northern's Colin Silverthorne with 27 seconds left in the first period. And then Deegan pinned Providence's Gavin Geis in the third period. Those guys wrestling at 149. So impressive. Jarrett Deegan gets to return home one last time. Treasure State Stars presented by Parkside Credit Union. Our Treasure State Star number 4, another wrestler. I talked about the Jug Bet Classic off the top. I would argue that it is among, if not the hardest wrestling tournament in Montana to win, because you have schools from all over, not just the state, but the region. Some schools from Idaho and even Washington come over for it. It's a huge invitational. You have to wrestle multiple rounds to be able to win it outright. And other than the state tournament, it's really tough to win. Well, Ridge Cody off to a pretty good start. He's a freshman at Ronan High School, and he won the Jug back at 113 pounds as a freshman. Pretty amazing. I mean, honestly, you see wrestlers as freshmen win state at their classification more often than you would see them win a big invitational like that at the Jug Beck. So pretty cool for Ridge Cody, a name to keep an eye on because he's definitely a guy that's already making waves here as a freshman up in Ronan, and will probably continue making waves as well. Treasure State Star number 5, the Lockwood High School girls basketball team. Lockwood High School opened a couple years ago. This is their first season competing in varsity sports. And again, a freshman, Taylor Harris. She drops 30 to lead the Lockwood girls to their first ever varsity win as a program. They beat Livingston. That's Park County High School for those keeping track. 55-39, Lockwood won that game Saturday night at the Lockwood High School gym. Lockwood High School's been in the news more the last couple of years because the gym's new, and so they've hosted several district tournaments for both basketball and volleyball. It's a new facility. It's sort of, I don't want to say centrally located, but it's a good hub around the Billings area. And so, I don't know, interesting. It's just interesting to see sort of the population reallotment in Montana. We see some Class C schools just ceasing to exist, or maybe not being able to have sports teams unless they co-op. We see some Class B schools with dwindling populations. We've seen a couple of schools move from Class A down to Class B, probably most notably Anaconda a few years back. But we also see booming populations in certain cities in Missoula, in Montana, including Missoula. You also see an addition of a AA high school in Bozeman. You see Belgrade moving up to AA. And then you also see new high schools like East Helena and Lockwood. So the population redistribution becoming more metropolitan, more urbanized here in Montana. Interesting to see. But Taylor Harris's 30 points leads Lockwood to their first ever varsity victory over Livingston on Saturday night. And finally, our Treasure State Star number 6 for the week, Steve Keller, a very well-known name in the world of hoops around the state of Montana. A good friend of this show, guys, joined us several times throughout the years. He's had quite the coaching odyssey. He was the head both girls and boys basketball coach at Helena High when the seasons were at different times. He won 610 games at the high school level, all told, multiple state championships, coached some players that went on to be all-time greats in their college careers. And then Keller moved into the college ranks, and he was dynamite at Montana Western, led Montana Western to the Elite 8 of the NAIA tournament at least 3, maybe 4 times. And the other night, now he is at the University of Providence in Great Falls, so still in the Frontier, but he won his 300th game at the collegiate level. So that's 910 total victories for Steve Keller, but a landmark win for Coach Keller getting his 300th win. And we always have Coach Keller on once or twice a year just because he's a great guy to talk to. He knows more about hoops than almost anybody I know, so we'll probably have him on sometime. down the road. Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. Colter Nuanez coming to you from the Northwest Motorsports Studio. Thanks so much to Parkside Credit Union for their sponsoring of our Treasure State Stars. Parkside Credit Union is the best place to get a loan in western Montana because they love to say yes. Hour 1 in the books, Hour 2 coming at you. Is there a quarterback competition brewing in Bozeman? What sort of pieces do the Grizzlies need to fill in on the football field? And Montana State's had 11 days off on the hardwood. What's next for the Bobcats? Brooks Nuanez will join us to talk all things Big Sky Conference football, and Montana State head men's basketball coach Danny Sprinkle will also join us. Keep it right here, ESPN Radio.
Is 2022 the year you're finally ready to step up your hair game? If you're not sure where to go, look no farther than Compass Barbershop, a modern barbershop for everyone, where they can help you find a style that's right for you. Offering precision scissor cuts and fades in a unique and inclusive atmosphere, Compass Barbershop has it all, including convenient online booking at compassbarber.com. Step up your hair game in 2022. Find your way to Compass Barbershop, downtown on the Hip Strip, at the corner of modern and retro.
Jake Dubeck knows people, and because of his gift of getting to know anyone he crosses paths with, Jake Dubeck understands what makes Montana so great. The Montanans. Whether you're looking to buy or sell real estate in the Helena area, Jake Dubeck should be your first call. Any questions you might have, from the accelerating Montana real estate market to knowledge of the neighborhoods in and around the capital city, if you're in the Helena area, call Jake Dubeck at 406-465-5506. Jake, proud supporter of the Montana State Minute with Danny Sprinkle.
Where can you find first-hand football analysis from a man who's shared locker rooms with NFL Hall of Famers? How about every Monday on Nuanez Now? Former Montana quarterback Marty Mornhinweg has spent over 2 decades as a coach in the NFL, competing with and against some of the greatest players the game has ever seen. Now Coach Marty shares his wisdom and stories with you on the Monday afternoon quarterback. Every week in the second hour of Monday's Nuanez Now, 5 p.m. only on ESPN 102.9 Missoula. Brought to you by Alpine Touch.
Now out on the field, it can get a little cold. I remember there was a playoff game and we were in 4 minutes. That means we were ahead in that particular instance by 2 scores. And we threw a sprint out on 3rd down. And Brett didn't throw it. It was wide open. Brett Favre didn't throw it. Right at the end of the game. And he ran it and slid and kept the clock rolling, which was fine. But he comes over to the sideline. I go, why didn't you throw that? He said, Marty, my hand is frozen.
Yo, 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 what's up, Montana? Colter Nuanez from ESPN Radio, host of your favorite daily sports talk show, Nuanez Now. We're happy to announce we're rolling over the Montana Football Hour into the Montana Basketball Hour. That's right, the first hour of each Monday's show on Nuanez Now. We'll be talking all things Big Sky Conference hoops, particularly when it comes to the Grizzlies and the Bobcats. So be sure to tune in 4 p.m. every Monday for the Montana Basketball Hour, proudly presented by the Advocates. Remember, you're not alone. You have an advocate. Are you hungry? I'm always hungry. So then it should be no surprise that each and every day on my daily radio show, Nuanez Now, we're giving away great things for you to eat. Whether it's sandwiches from Taglieri Deli, wings from the Desperado Sports Tavern and Grill, Seattle-style teriyaki from Doby's, or the Iron Grizz boil from the Iron Grizz American Bistro, tune into Nuanez Now from 4 to 6 p.m. every single day on 102.9 ESPN Missoula for your chance to fill your belly.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275ES Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Shockwaves emerged from the mining city on Monday with 2 huge decisions at the annual Montana High School Association meetings. Hello, I am Colter Nuanez. Among a myriad of decisions, the MHSA voted to add shot clocks to all classifications of varsity and sub-varsity basketball across the state for prep hoops, and the MHSA also announced the addition of baseball as a sport. Representatives from the high schools all across Montana met in person at the Copper King Hotel in Butte to discuss and vote on a number of issues, but the 2 proposals that drew the most attention for certainly baseball and shot clock. Since neither was an MHSA bylaw, both proposals required a simple majority and each passed in overwhelming fashion on Monday. Shot clocks and baseball are both planned to begin during the 2022-2023 academic school year. In Big Sky Conference hoops, a slew of makeup games played out on Monday across the league. In Bozeman, the Montana State women posted a 79-69 win over Idaho after taking 16 days off because of COVID protocols. In her first game since January 1st, Darian White scored 21 points and dished out 4 assists as MSU moved to 3-2 in league play. In the other Big Sky women's game Monday, Eastern Washington drilled Portland State 68-44. On the men's side, Northern Arizona emerged with a wild 74-72 win over Idaho in Flagstaff. Weber State drilled Idaho State 78-61, and Southern Utah ripped Portland State 86-76.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Selway Armory.
Should I been, could I been, would I been dead if I didn't get a message going to my head? I am what I am, don't give a damn. Oh, baby, think you can be my girl, I'll be your man.
Man, there's just certain albums when they drop. It's not even hyperbole, man. It changed the world. Let's Take Sugar Magic, Red Hot Chili Peppers, definitely one of them. Nobody had ever heard anything like this. And you can say whatever you want about the Chili Peppers now, their evolution. If you've been around for 30 years, you're doing something right. And this was a transcendent album when it dropped 30 years ago. Welcome back. Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. I'm Colter Nuanez coming to you from the Northwest Motorsport Studio. You can find amazing winter savings at Northwest Motorsport. Visit NWMS Rocks to check out the largest selection of trucks anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. You missed anything in the first hour of the show, we talked around the Big Sky in men's hoops. Talked a little bit about the Grizzlies, Weber State, some of the new faces in the league, some of the departed faces in the league, and everything in between. We also heard from Katie Grush from the Missoula YMCA, the youth sports director there at the Y. And we have our Treasure State Stars for the week. Oh, we also hooked you up with some Taglieri, too. You're welcome. You find everything from the first hour of today's show on the Nuanez Now podcast, which is probably presented by Sportsbet Montana. You want to be a part of the show? You want to hit us up? You want to text us? Call us? 406-888-1029. That's 888-1029. Certainly the longest football season when it comes to the college ranks and the Big Sky Conference ranks of our professional careers, including our collaboration at SkylineSportsMT.com, as well as here at ESPN Missoula, certainly. By the way, we're fast approaching our 10-year anniversary for ESPN Missoula. We got a cool promotion coming up. I'll save you the details for a little while later, but you're going to have more chances to win Desperado wings than you ever have before, and we give you a lot of Despo wings, so that should be very fun. Stay tuned for that. February, our 10th anniversary. I've been here at ESPN Missoula. It'll be 5 years in July, so it'll be very fun to celebrate all of those things, but the arc of the college football season, the Big Sky Conference level, it was very fun because there was a lot of high expectations and so much anticipation given the cancellation of the 2020 season and the fact that Montana only played in 2 spring games. Montana State didn't play in any. You also had a coaching change and all these different dynamics, and it all came to a head in really actually lackluster fashion for the endings for both Montana and Montana State. Such great seasons for both the Grizz and the Bobcats, and both fell short and both had their seasons end in these games that had these deflating moments in which the teams couldn't bounce back from. And for Montana, it was in the quarterfinals at James Madison, Cam Humphrey and Sammy Kim getting knocked out early on. And for the Bobcats, it was in the FCS National Championship game. We're joined now by Brooks Nuanez from Skyline Sports to talk a little bit about all that stuff, not only necessarily the past, but also the present and the future. But Brooks, here we are now, and we're about 8 days out from being in Frisco, Texas, and watching Montana State lose 38-10 to North Dakota State. We haven't gotten your perspective on this yet. So I know that we've sort of talked about this a lot the last week or so here on ESPN Radio, but what did you think? I mean, you were on the field. You were at the field level. We've sat here and complained about all the logistics and the NCAA and all that, and it wasn't great. But what did you think, just from an experience standpoint and from just a being on the field coverage standpoint?
The experience was cool, man. We've been down there before. It was a short trip this time, but overall, I mean, I actually kind of like the venue. I don't like the field, but I think the venue's kind of cool.
Yeah, the fact that it's, for those that are wondering about this, it's this specific Bermuda grass that soccer players favor, but they also cut it very similarly to what a soccer player would like. And you got to remember that soccer players run 7 to 8 miles in a game, and most soccer players weigh like 150 pounds. So it's not the same. It's not the same physical surface that you're going to need for 300-plus pound linemen like you have in college football. So it is a distinct difference in its impact on the game.
It is definitely. And last time we were there to watch Eastern Washington play North Dakota State, Eric Berry was sliding all over the field. It rained the same kind of way it did the night before, but that's here nor there. It's a field. It's football. It is what it is. I think everyone, with both those teams full of North Dakota and Montana kids, they've probably played in some pretty good weather before.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think the stadium is cool. I think the logistics of the whole thing are fine. It's never great. I go to so many tournaments and neutral sites and blah, blah, blah. And it's always okay. The NCAA does a decent job. I could have used some food that day, but that's, again, here nor there.
Oreos and cheddar popcorn. That's not real meals?
No.
I ate 2 bags of the cheddar popcorn.
I didn't. If you had toothpicks, I would have dove in, but it wasn't going to ruin my day. The game itself was interesting. It's North Dakota State is just an absolute buzzsaw, right? I mean, how else could you describe it? The juggernaut, the dynasty. I think it's more of a buzzsaw, I mean, they get you in so many different ways. And it's not, I have talked about this before, but I need to reiterate the importance of it's not a bunch of big farm kids.
Right.
Everyone says they're so big. They are so big. They're also so fast. They also have so many elite FBS-looking 6'1", 195-pound dudes with diamond calves that run.
Oh yeah. They have 25 guys that hail from either the state of Florida or the state of Georgia. They're not, like you're saying, from Buxton, North Dakota, or Balfour, North Dakota. I mean, Christian Watson is 6'5", 210 from Tampa Bay, Florida. He was a Florida state champion in the 100 meters dash. That's a different athlete than anybody else in the FCS has ever gotten.
Yeah, and they look different up close, but then the intensity level, but the swagger, man, it's not some podunk small town Midwestern thing.
That's you and I would both agree. The most striking part about watching North Dakota State is not watching them play. It's watching them warm up.
Yeah,
watching them warm up is crazy, man. Like their level of intensity from 1 through 99 on their roster combined with, I mean, that's the other thing. And I know I've said this on the show before, but FCS, looking at the lines warming up, particularly offensive lines, is always so funny because you have so many different body types.
That's the best part of FCS football.
Right.
Every position has just a bunch of different kind of guys.
Right, like Justice Perkins from Montana State is a good center. He's like my size. He's like 6 feet, 265 pounds, a little bit bigger than I am. And North Dakota State, though, no.
No.
Nope, they all look the same. They all are no one's too fat, no one's too skinny. They all look like Colin Dow, for those that remember the Grizz teams of the first Bobby Howe go-round.
Yeah.
They all look like, I'm trying to think of a Montana State example. They all look like Mitch Brott.
Yeah.
All of them. It's amazing to watch. And they're even more athletic than Mitch Brott. Mitch Brott was a great athlete at Montana State.
Yeah, they're elite, man. It's a top 25 program in the country, including the FBS. I think that they would easily go into the Big Ten and the Big 12 and mop some teams. Not just compete. I think they would dominate some teams. I don't think they'd win the Big Ten or anything, but I think they could climb their way into the upper half quickly. Year 1, year 2. Be competing with, Minnesota year in, year out, Northwestern year in, year out, Iowa State year in, year out. And those are top 20 programs, I think North Dakota State's right there. And they're playing an FCS schedule. And then, of course, the Tommy Mellott injury was challenging for Montana State. And it was challenging for anyone who was at the game who wanted to see, a good equal battle, because I think the score would have ended up being similar. It was 38-10. I could have seen it end up being 35-17, but I don't think it would have been drastically different. But I do think Montana State would have been able to generate some offense and keep the ball a little bit. The defense just started to get hammered. I mean, after a while, it was, Callahan O'Reilly and Troy Anderson and Ty Okada dragging limbs around. That it was not a good day for that group.
Well, and I've been going through all the photos, which, by the way, you can check out photo galleries. We've had posted photo galleries from both Jason Bocci and Blake Hempstead, and truly appreciate those guys for all their awesome contributions at Skyline Sports this year. But I'm going to have one with Brooks, of Brooks's photos from this midweek as well. But it's so crazy looking at all the photos when you're looking down the camera lens. A game like that, it's accentuated even more, because so often in college football now, all of the photos are just guys in open space and guys missing or making open field tackles. Almost all of Blake and Jason's photos, and some of the ones I've seen of you too, you really are just staring down the barrel. And here's 3 different NDSU offensive linemen and this boss hog running back just coming in. And Troy Anderson and Ty Okada and guys that are some of the best defensive players in the league, in the country, are just getting tossed.
It's what we like to call a pile of humanity. It's striking. It's some of the most physical brand of football out there. We talk about the size and the intensity and the swagger. That's the other portion of North Dakota State that is true. It is an amazing level of physicality. They bring it. Every player, like you mentioned, 1 through 99, it's darn impressive, man. They got a good thing going. They care about it a whole lot. I don't think that they're setting their sights on bigger and better things isn't really how they run their program, and that's a really cool part of it. A lot of schools at this level, the James Madisons of the world, the Sam Houstons of the world, the Montana State, at times the conversation has been, when do we move up? What do we do here? I'm sure North Dakota State has that tenor going on around the program, but within it, they care about what's happening here and now, and not a whole lot more, which is quite a thing to watch.
Nuanez now, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Brooks Nuanez joining us here on ESPN Radio. It's all football all the time, presented by SportsBet Montana. Had a great weekend hanging out next to the SportsBet Montana machines. The NFL playoffs is as fun as it gets, and we're going to get into that a little later on this week as well. Some of the best bets we had and some of the best bets we might make as well. But I appreciate SportsBet Montana for being a part of this show here on ESPN Radio. And Brooks, obviously, then the story for Montana State coming out of this game is twofold. One, the incremental build of the Bobcats, how they were able to go from a 4-7 team back in 2016 to a team that is now in the midst of 3 straight playoff appearances. They made it to the second round in 2018. They made it to the semifinals in 2019. They made it to the national championship in 2021. They lost to the exact same opponent each of the 3 times in North Dakota State. The margin of victory lessened, but I mean, let's be honest. North Dakota State was up 35-0 in the first play of the second half. So
it was close.
It was cruise control. So I mean, you can't really say, well, we were 2 touchdowns better than we were in 2018. Well, not really. It's just the same beatdown. But for the Cats, though, can they sustain that level? But more importantly, how do they react then to what this upcoming offseason is going to be filled with, which is just endless conversations and endless things that could be considered a distraction? Tommy Malot's going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. He caught lightning in a bottle, and now he's going to have to, can he perform like he did against Sam Houston in South Dakota State? Can he attain that level as a full-time starter as a sophomore? Will he be the full-time starter? Suffered a bad injury, had some surgery. He'll be fine by the fall, but he will incur his spring ball reps. In the meantime, Montana State brought in Sean Chambers, a former starter at University of Wyoming. He started for multiple years at Wyoming. He won 13 games as the starter as Wyoming, 13-6 as a starter there. Was the starter as a freshman, knocked out. Starter as a sophomore, knocked out, then had such a bad injury during the fall of 2020 that it cost him early I guess that ended his 2020 season. He then was a starter in 2021, but was replaced about halfway through the year, and now he's reunited with the guy who brought him to Laramie in former Wyoming offensive coordinator and current Montana State head coach Brent Vigen. So there's going to be so much narrative around the Cats, period. How do you replace Troy Anderson? How do you replace Chase Benson? How do you rebuild an offensive line that loses Lewis Kidd and Taylor Tuiasosopo? But to me, the weight and the pressure starts with the quarterback position and Tommy Malott trying to live up to what's going to be sky-high expectations.
Very high expectations. Luckily for him, it's such a bad injury that he suffered, the classic high ankle sprain. Luckily for him, it was bad enough or it was diagnosed correctly by doctors to be able to have surgery, because that injury is can be career ending if you don't have surgery. If you try to let it heal in the way it can happen, it's actually a pretty clean surgery, especially if there's no break. They kind of just lace back up the tibia and the fibia together, as those two usually separate with twisting of those 2 lower leg bones. You almost have like a subluxation or a dislocation of the ankle, and you have 2 lower leg bones that the ligament that holds them together tears. When you actually put that back together, it actually is a more sustainable injury to deal with. So high expectations for Tommy. They bring in a transfer quarterback yet again, which is just kind of the narrative of these high-level programs in the FCS. And Sean Chambers is no joke. He's a good player. I've seen him play quite a bit, and I thought he was talented. So for Tommy, I don't think that you can really go into the season expecting to be the starter. I think that's probably going to be quite an open competition, as well as maybe some falling back on some of those abilities that Tommy showed to play other positions, which is really hard when you have maybe your best ball carrier. You might not want to put at quarterback, so maybe he plays a different position.
Well, that's the thing that's going to be so interesting to me, is that the whole notion that you need one quarterback, like there's always been the old saying, if you got multiple quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. That's not true in college football anymore, though, especially if you have a running quarterback system. I think there's an opportunity to run two quarterback systems all day long, if especially not one or the other is a runner, if they're both runners. That can be the most dangerous that you can be in a college football system, because then you can line them both up in the backfield at the same time sometimes. So we'll see. I do think that you got a no-lose situation from the premise of, if this inspires Tommy Mellott to really just take the next step, then all of a sudden he is the dude and he's the man and he's rolling. And if he's not, if he doesn't, then probably Chambers was pretty darn good, and you're going to have a pretty good player at that spot. I guess it remains to be seen, because Brent Vigen has so much quarterback acumen in the praise of his coaching, partially because of what Josh Allen has become. But I just don't know if that's an applicable comparison when you're talking about Montana State. I don't know. I don't know. We still don't know if Brent Vigen can develop an FCS quarterback. We know he can develop a raw FBS quarterback who goes on to take the NFL by storm, but can he develop an FCS quarterback? That's a huge question mark as well.
Yeah, Josh Allen got to Wyoming throwing the ball 175 miles an hour. Brent Vigen did not help in that.
Right.
I think that was, you hope to be one of the good coaches say, rather be lucky than good. The one thing about Tommy Mellott that I think is worth noting is, I don't think, Coulter, you have to agree that there has ever been a quarterback as a freshman who carries the ball between 25 and 30 times a game that actually survives a college career.
Well, right.
I don't think that's a thing.
Well, if it would have been the whole season, then he would have already been fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
He did carry the ball like close to 100 times in the playoffs alone, which is a pretty striking number. But
and then I think that there's just an opportunity to truly just play him at running back,
right,
and give him 10 carries and throw him the ball 3 or 4 times. Like I don't.
But do you not see a future for him at quarterback?
I do see a future for him at quarterback, but you don't really just go get your former FBS dropped out, your recruits from an FBS school to come in to sit around. I mean, I do think that there's a future for Tommy, but he has not shown an aptitude to throw the ball short and intermediate, which is a challenging aspect. You can't get away with throwing the deep ball forever. It doesn't win in the playoffs necessarily.
For sure. Well, but he proved that it does win in the playoffs this year. But I guess you're right, though. It's just going to be very.
He ran the ball 35 times. He had 7 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, that one, they didn't win because they threw a couple deep balls. I mean, sure, there were huge plays in the game, but I just don't think that that's something they're going to build their entire program off of. Cross your fingers that you get a 5th-year senior that has NFL potential to start catching deep balls. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's necessarily like an offensive principle that you want to hang your hat on.
It's true. It's definitely true, and we'll see how it all plays out. All football all the time with Brooks Nuanez here. Brooks of Skyline Sports, doubling up the Nuanez now for you here on a Tuesday. Appreciate you being here with us, talking some Big Sky Conference football. And so, Brooks, last question on the Bobcats, and then I'm going to ask you a couple just about the Grizz in this upcoming offseason for Montana. This question about quarterbacks is certainly going to be the dominant question of the narrative of the next 9 months heading into the 2022 season. But what else are your concerns, or I guess are the biggest issues that Montana State needs to address?
Well, I think that they've made the incremental jump from 2016, 17, 18, 19, as you outlined clearly, due to defensive line play. And
right.
That's all a Jeff Choate, background. And now Brent Vigen goes into his second year with his first-time offensive coordinator, Freddie Banks, leaving for Colorado State.
Yeah. That's the other question, too, when it comes to the quarterbacks, not to interrupt you, but both Brent Vigen and Taylor Housewright were sort of pseudo play callers, pseudo quarterbacks coaches, but in reality, especially in games, Tucker Rovig was the quarterbacks coach. That's why there was nobody to coach Rovig on the sideline, because Rovig was the one coaching Tommy Mellott on the sideline. So when Rovig went into the game, there was no quarterbacks coach.
Certainly.
Our good friend Paul, who was a former quarterback who was down there watching the game with us, he was saying, how come nobody's talking to this kid? I said, well, he's the coach that talks to the kid, and now he's in the game.
I told you.
So they need to have something in that element as well.
The guy that was calling in plays, signaling in plays with Casey Bauman was a guy I'd never seen in my entire life from Montana State.
Right.
So, yeah, something went awry there. It's called the only chance you have in the entire world to win a game got a broken ankle. It's a pretty bad situation.
It's a bad situation.
The defensive line depth is everything for Montana State as far as how you build out that front seven and how you become a defensive winning football team, which is how they've won. They've run the football, and that's all good and well. And Brent Fegan has that great quote that says, running the football and playing defense is how you win, especially late in the season. But it's easy to say, hard to do. Well, that's going to continue to be the case because I think that they do have a legitimate program that can churn out running backs. Building defensive line depth, getting defensive line recruits that continue to just come in waves, is challenging.
But they still have some of the guys left over from Choate, and that's the thing where, on one hand, replacing Chase Benson, Amandre Williams, and Daniel Hardy and Kyle Rigg is a tall task. Those are 4 seniors that were 3 of them elite players, and Rigg could have been, nobody really knows because he got hurt the first game of the year. But I have a lot more confidence in the young players like Sebastian Valdez and Brody Grebe than maybe some of the other unproven guys they have at other positions.
I do as well, but I just saw that group, who I have a ton of respect for, get absolutely manhandled.
True.
And that's with Amandre Williams and Daniel Hardy getting blown off the ball by 3-4 yards. And guys that we thought know that are good players. So again, does Montana State return to a 1 or 2 loss season? They go 9-2 and 10-2. I think that's all on the table with the amount of talent they have. But we're talking about national expectations.
Sure.
So how do you replace Chase Benson, Amandre Williams, Daniel Hardy, and make a national championship run? That's a tall task, and that's all going to start with figuring out who the coordinator is and what system they want to run. It's going to be very challenging if they try to switch back systems, especially for some of the success of those young guys. You mentioned Brody Grebe coming in as a third down, wide 9 defensive end that rushes 4-3. That's a whole different game if you switch that scheme up. So that'll be hugely important. I think it's probably the antithesis of how they will find success in 2022.
I mean, to me, the 2 biggest issues that they have, I think, are on the offensive line at wide receiver, because they basically had one wide receiver this year, Lance McCutcheon. They threw him the ball all the time. That was the only guy they threw the ball to, really.
That's how they've been running it for about 10 years.
And so they just need anybody, because Coy Steele decided to forego his last year eligibility. Willie Pedersen still has so much hype, but I don't really know why, because at this point now, I mean, he contributes or whatever. He's a fine player, but you being the up and coming guy it wears thin when now you're a senior. So
the plays. It's not the best attribute.
That's right. So where do they go from here? I do think they have some studs at tight end that maybe they could get a little bit more involved.
I think if Jaden Smith can stay healthy, I mean, he's got the body. He's solid 6'6". I mean, he looks the part, and he's struggled with staying healthy, and then struggled with, I think, being motivated, being moved down the depth chart when you can't make it to practice. Then all of a sudden you fall down the chart. And things aren't looking up for you. Some guys get the idea in their head that it'll come in the future. He's only a sophomore. Well, you become a junior really quick, and you got to step up. But I do think that he has the ability to be someone that could, be that number 1 guy.
And they just need a few options there, because they are going to still be just a run-first type team for sure. To me, though, the absolute number 1 thing that Montana State has to find an answer for is, how do you replace Taylor Tuiasosopo and Lewis Kidd? I know that those guys were all Big Sky guys as juniors and seniors, but I thought they were even maybe a little underrated. I just think those 2 guys were 2 of the better guys we've seen in the league, in the last handful of years. I mean, they're both really good, and they both fit both the schemes that they ran during their careers. And more than anything, though, they're just the tone setters. Because Montana State has pretty good talent. TJ Session, Rush Reimer, those guys are young guys that could be pretty good. Who's going to lead the way, though? Kidd and Tuiasosopo were such opposites in their personalities, and that's why they were such good leaders with each other. Where do they go from there? That's just such a tough one. Nuanez now, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Let's talk Grizz quickly, because the Grizz have brought in a handful of transfers now. A quarterback in Lucas Johnson from San Diego State, a wide receiver, Sawyer Roccanelli from Washington, a pair of corners, Jaden Dawson, formerly of Idaho State, and Robbie Whitehead, who comes from Grossmont Junior College. And then earlier today, the addition of Vincent Genatone, who's the cousin of Nick Genatone, who played for the Grizz once upon a time. But Vincent Genatone, a small school guy out of Nebraska, but an unbelievable athlete. He ran a 10.8 in the 100 meters. Also ran 4.45 at the Nebraska individual camp last spring. Had some potential walk-on interest from both Nebraska and Kansas State, but he made his official visit to Montana this last week, so he's committed. Well, Brooks, for the Grizz, I think that we sort of saw this last year about Dante Olson graduating and how there's a little bit of a production dip at inside linebacker, but not really. I mean, Montana's inside linebackers both had 100-plus tackles, Jace Lewis and Marcus Welldale. Braxton Hill was also very productive as sort of the third inside guy. So with Jace Lewis moving on, I don't necessarily think that, even though he was a really good player, it's not necessarily like an irreplaceable part But there are a bunch of places that Montana does need to find answers. Starting with quarterback, that's also going to be a headlining story, as it always is across all of football. But what else? I mean, what do you think of the Grizz? Where else do they need to find upgrades or have guys emerge?
They've had a couple guys recently sign in the secondary, and I think it's vitally important to continue to develop and have depth at the secondary and guys that are going to be the next guy up after, this next class exits, which is kind of the Robbie Houck and Nash Vauch will come up on it soon. Justin Ford will come up on it soon. But like you saw this year, Corbin Walker played so well at corner. You need to have another Corbin Walker every year.
Right.
Continue to develop it. When Montana has been good, in the mid to late 2000s, it was so secondary driven. It ends up having good pass rush. There's really famous linebackers that just played so darn well. But it ends up being that the best players in the core of the unit in the national championship runs are due to the secondary. In 2008, 2009, you're talking about Colt Anderson, Shan Schillinger, and Eric Stoll, and Tremaine Johnson, and Jimmy Wilson, and every single one of those guys played in the NFL.
Right.
I guess Eric Stoll decided to be a doctor, but he's probably doing fine himself. Shout out Eric Stoll. Every single guy that's named played in the NFL. Most of those guys were drafted.
Right.
That's how you continue to develop and become elite, because those guys are run stoppers too. So it's just the well-rounded nature of defense, the pressure element, the man zero pressure looks that Montana has been loving to run under Kent Bear especially. I think it's so much it relies on having good defensive back play.
For sure, and I do think that they're going to have to find some guys, and maybe those guys are in the program to sort of emerge at the defensive end spots, because the guys they had this year were fine. They were good, solid. Justin Belknap and Joe Babros were solid. So can Jacob McGowering take the next step? I've
been waiting for him to do that. I think it's there, right?
It's there.
He just keeps getting bigger. Maybe plays on the inside.
Honestly, I think part of it was his problem was that the 2 years off made it so he gained so much mass, and he didn't know. It's not even that he's too big. I think he just didn't know how to play, having gained 50 pounds. I think he'll get better at it.
I think he could play on the inside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's huge. He's huge. So
it doesn't really have the bend to turn the corner. They haven't had a lot of guys that turn the corner. They do it with the linebacker position right now. Well,
that's the thing is, I don't even know if these guys can turn the corner because they're not really in the scheme to do that. They're in the scheme to just mash heads and just
ends,
they just run crazy chaos, or they zone drop.
Yeah, right.
So it is sort of interesting to see how all that goes. But I think they'll be good in the secondary again, because they do have guys in the program that are rising, and also they've added some transfers. I know I sound like a broken record, but I think the offensive line is so much more important than the quarterback. I mean, here's the thing. That's what we saw in Frisco.
Oh, certainly is.
You can be – here's the best way I could say it, though, because people don't watch football through the lines like I watch it. You can be significantly better at every single position on the field, and if the other team has the best offensive line in the country, they're going to beat you. It's it. It is what it is. And so I think that although there's been this sort of narrative that Montana's gotten better on the offensive line since Bobby Houck returned, which is true, but it's not nearly as resoundingly true as it should be, and it's not nearly as resoundingly true as they need it to be.
And how much better every other position has gotten under Houck, except offensive line has been much smaller incrementally.
Yeah, they got to be better on the offensive front, period. They absolutely have to. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if they have guys that have been in the program for a couple of years, are ready to emerge or not, but I think it starts and ends there, and I think everything else can fall into place.
And it also starts and ends at the food zoo, so see you down there, big boys.
Nuanez now, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Brooks Nuanez in studio with us, talking all things Big Sky Conference football. Thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, and you always know my go-to, Coulter, throw it to the tight end.
Throw it to the tight end, baby. That's what he's always been saying. Brooks Nuanez here on Nuanez Now. Doubling up your Nuanez Now. We're talking about some Grizz hoops as well as Montana State head men's basketball coach Danny Sprinkle. Keep it right here, ESPN Radio. Hey, it's Coulter Nuanez from Nuanez Now, here with Brent Wahlberg of the Wahlberg team at Windermere Real Estate. It's a complicated real estate market right now. What do you think is the biggest challenge?
This is a real tough market for buyers, because what we have right now is an unprecedented lack of available options, low supply. You have to be extra competitive. You've got to make your first offer your strongest offer. Experts like myself in this market can really help people do that.
Call Brent Wahlberg and the Wahlberg team at 529-4663 today.
Never hired an electrical contractor? Don't even know where to start? Here's a clue. Ask around and go with the one that's most established with the best reputation. Chances are you'll hear Liberty Electric. Since 1979, Liberty Electric has offered homeowners professional and timely services at a shockingly affordable price. Building a new home, making upgrades, or just concerned about those wires that are hanging around? Choose the electrician your neighbors have been for decades. Liberty Electric. Call 541-WIRE. That's 541-9473.
Paul Ryan is a name that's been synonymous with law around the Garden City for decades. And Paul is excited to announce the expansion of his firm to Ryan, Holloway, and Miller. Paul Ryan, Nate Holloway, and Angie Miller have a fierce love for their community, and they want to help you with any of your legal needs. From auto accidents to medical malpractice to wrongful death or any criminal defense, Ryan, Holloway, and Miller should be your first call. When it comes to personal injury or criminal defense, call Ryan, Holloway, and Miller today. Ryan, Holloway, and Miller, your Montana attorneys.
The football playoffs are finally here. Time to get off the sidelines and into the all-new Turf Club Sportsbook. Straight bets, prop bets, parlays, and more. All in a modern game day lounge with plush recliners, food, and drink service. Don't just watch the games, get your piece of the action. Grab a few friends and huddle up now at Turf Club Sportsbook, the ultimate game changer. Only at Northern Quest.
Part of the glory of building a business comes from leaving a legacy to ensure your business continues thriving into the future. Have you asked yourself lately, what is your plan? Forming a personalized business succession plan is essential to know the passion you put into your business will carry on. Nick Tabor at Westpac Wealth is here to help you navigate all your business succession and retirement planning needs. Give Nick a call at 728-6699 and keep the spirit of possibility vibrant while making your future more tax efficient with a personalized business succession and retirement plan for you.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
I'm so lonely, that's okay. Shake my head, and I'm not sad. And just maybe I'm to blame for all I've heard. And I'm not sure. I'm so excited, I can't wait to meet you there. And I don't care, I'm so horny, that's okay. My will is good.
What up, Montana? A little Nirvana for you here on a Tuesday. Hope you're having a fantastic start to your week. Happy evening of a Tuesday. Appreciate you being here with me, Colter Nuanez, here on ESPN Radio. It's time now for our Montana State Minute. We do this a couple times a week, featuring now this time of year, Danny Sprinkle, the head men's basketball coach for MSU, once a week. We'll also hear from Alex Esselman from SWX Montana Television tomorrow. Probably hear from Sean Rainey from SWX Montana Television later on this week as well. Perspective on both sides. We're talking a little Grizz hoops towards the end of the show as well, because we did get into the Big Sky and a little bit about the Grizz, but I want to hash a few more things out with Andrew Houghton. But first, let's dive into the Montana State Minute. It's presented in part by J&V Restaurant Supply. J&V Restaurant Supply is your home for everything kitchen, everything you need for your next tailgate or that big family party or whatever get-together you might have. Or if you're just a restaurant owner, you can find all of it at J&V's 3 locations in Bozeman, Billings, and Great Falls. If you can't make it in, J&V also has an awesome website, jnvrestaurant.com, jvrestaurant.com. Proud sponsors of sports throughout the state of Montana for more than 45 years, and proud sponsors of the Montana State Minute. Well, now we're in a rhythm. Now we're in a routine. Time again for our Montana State Minute. Montana State head men's basketball coach Danny Sprinkle joins us every Tuesday here on Nuanez Now. Appreciate Coach Sprinkle for always taking some time for us. And now we've done this about 3 weeks in a row, so it feels like we're back in the routine, which is a good thing. But, Coach, first of all, thanks for joining us. But I want to ask you about the element of routine, because we don't necessarily want to analyze the ins and outs of the pandemic. We're not smart enough for that. There's a lot more people out there to do all the science and all that stuff for you. But from a basketball perspective, it seems to me when you have sort of this haphazard schedule that you just never know when games could happen and not happen. You guys got your game on Saturday against Southern Utah postponed. How hard is it just to get into a rhythm for your guys?
It is. You know, it's a pain in the butt, but
it is for everybody. And so you just kind of have to, you have to have some maturity, and you have to be able to, bounce back just like we did, a lot of times last year. And our guys, we've had some good practices in that span, and we needed practice time, to be honest with you. So, hopefully we got better. It was a good time to kind of heal up from some nicks and bruises, and now we got to go on a tough road trip down to NAU and at Portland State this weekend, where we got to go try and steal 2 wins.
The Big Sky has been playing a neutral site tournament now for, I guess, half a dozen, maybe 7 years. And it seems like pretty much everybody in the league likes that format, at least broadly. But it seems also that now, these last couple years, it's more important than ever, just because it is important to peak at tournament time. And I feel like it's hard to ever peak when you do have such a haphazard schedule. So, I mean, does that element play into this? I mean, are you guys, does it play into the way that you prepare your team and try to coach down the stretch here just to make sure you're peaking at the right time and have that time be in March in Boise?
I think so. I think everybody tries to do that. I mean, the main thing is you got to stay healthy. You got to stay fresh. You got to keep your best players healthy. And everybody, in the next couple of weeks, like those minutes all add up, over the course of the year. And so when you do get a chance to take a break, you got to make sure you're resting them. But I think also you need to, your team needs to be mature enough to realize, even though you may be winning games, like you still need to improve. There's still some things that, that we do, even though we're on a 3-game win streak. There's a lot of things that we're not doing well and that we have to clean up if we want to continue to improve. And vice versa, it's sometimes easier to have their attention after a loss. But I think the really good teams, you can still get their attention even after winning games.
Danny Sprinkle joining us. It's the Montana State Minute, presented by J&V Restaurant Supply, as well as Jake Dubeck, your Montana realtor. Coach Sprinkle joins us each week here on Nuanez Now. He's Montana State's men's basketball coach. MSU off to a 12-5 start, 4-2 in conference play, but haven't played since the rivalry game against Montana back on January 9th. Bobcats were supposed to play this last Saturday, supposed to be just their one single-game week against Southern Utah, but that one postponed. But now a tough road trip to Northern Arizona and Portland State. So first, before we get into the opponents upcoming, Coach, is there a way to take advantage of having extra time off? I know it's not what you want or necessarily what you hoped for, but it is an extended break for your guys. So how have you guys been navigating this in terms of practice and preparation?
Yeah, we gave them pretty much last weekend off. It was the first time we've been able to give them 2 straight. Actually, we practiced on Saturday morning, but then they had 48 hours before we reconvened on Monday afternoon. And so, just kind of give the guys I told them to get away from basketball more mentally than physically. It is a long season. And, and I know with, a lot of games are going to be packed in, to a short amount of time here pretty quick. With a lot of these cancellations and us, the league, we're trying to make up a lot of these games that are being canceled. It's going to come to it's going to become crazy here in about 2-3 weeks if there's some more games canceled. It's going to run out of time, to make up some of these games. And, right now, we're kind of planning on having to play, 4 games in about 5.5 days at the end of the season, right before the conference tournament, and so, we have to make sure that our guys are fresh and in the right mindset, in order to, finish this next, 55, 54 days strong.
Well, crazy that we are approaching less than 50 days here for the Big Sky tournament in Boise. By the way, as part of our partnership with Krista Redpath for our Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, we've also partnered with the Big Sky Conference. We got a pair of week-long passes for you, so we'll tease that every single Thursday when Krista's on the show. But good time to talk about it now as well. All you got to do is either tweet us, either at 1029 ESPN or at Skyline Sports MT, or you can text us 406-888-1029. Big Sky in Boise. That's all you got to tell us. Anything about the Big Sky tournament in Boise, but just Big Sky in Boise works. That'll get you entered, and we'll have a pair of passes for you to the Big Sky tournament in Boise that second week of March. Danny Sprinkle joining us here on Nuanez Now, Montana State Minute. And Coach, let's talk about the trip to NAU. Always an interesting trip when you go to Flagstaff to walk up Sky Dome. Man, it's just so funny the way that it all plays out. Every sport, it seems like weird stuff happens there. But how do you get prepared for this trip? Because it is just a little bit of a different one. Not an easy place to get to, not an easy place to play, and a sort of a unique venue as well.
Yeah, playing in their big football dome. It's a big old arena, and it is different shooting in there. One thing that it's kind of similar to Brick Breeden, except for it's a lot more wide open. And so, I think our guys will shoot the ball well, but it is a tough trip because you can go one of 2 ways. You can either fly into Flagstaff, which they only have a couple flights a day, so you might get in late at night, or you have to go to Phoenix and drive up that hill 2.5 hours. And so, we're going to kind of mix it up. We're actually going to fly into Flagstaff, and we're going to fly out of Phoenix because we have to catch a direct flight to Portland for Saturday's game.
Well, let's talk about Northern Arizona. Under Shane Burkhardt, they've done a pretty good job rebuilding. They got some good young talent, and they brought in a guy who came in with a lot of fanfare in Jalen Cone. He transferred from Virginia Tech who played quite a bit for the Hokies, and he's been good for Northern Arizona. He's lead them in scoring, one of the leading scorers in the conference so far. What have you thought of just the impact he's made?
Yeah, he's tremendous. He's dynamite when the ball's in his hands. And he's very talented. He's really quick. He's athletic. He can get his shot off against anybody. It doesn't matter if he's hard to double team, because he's so fast and quick. And so, I mean, we got our hands full, and he's one of the guys and, one of the top players in the league, and you cannot let him get going. He's going to take 20 shots. You have to hope that he shoots in that 7 for 20 or 6 for 20 and shoots a low percentage because when he gets hot in a hurry. And he can rattle off 4 or 5 threes in a row, and he can really break a game open. Very similar like what he did last night. It was a close game. In fact, they were down in the last 2.5 minutes, and he kind of just took the game over.
Jalen Cone last night poured in 24 points. A good effort by him, and he's had multiple 20-point, 25-point, and he's had as many as 33 points, which is one of the highest totals in the league for a single game this year. And, Coach, we always sort of gravitate towards the guys that are high scorers, and there always seems to be high-scoring guards in the Big Sky. But one guy that I just think was great last year as a young player, and it seems like he's taken the next step as well, at least just in terms of his motor and his energy, is Carson Tout. He's really good rebounder. He plays really, really hard, and he's really tough. What sort of impact do you think he has made, and what do you like about, or I guess, what do you think of that matchup? Because you have a pretty good physical front court led by Jabril Bello as well, but what do you think of the challenge that Bello might face on the block with a guy that plays so hard like Tout does?
Yeah, I mean, they're big and physical on the block. Tout's he's a relentless motor. He can really rebound the basketball. I think he's averaging almost 9 a game in conference, and he's just he's been a difference maker for him this year because he is so physical. He's a lot more athletic than people might think. I mean, if he'll drop step on you, and he's a really good player who's made a big jump from his freshman to sophomore year. But they also have some other big bodies. The Ezekiel Richards kid's playing really, really well for him, and he's a 6'10", 6'11", really physical, athletic guy down low. And so they've really improved their front court from last year.
Dave Sprinkle joining us here on the Montana State Minute, presented by J&V Restaurant Supply, as well as Jake Dubeck, your Montana realtor. Coach Sprinkle joins us each Tuesday here on Nuanez. Now his team embarking on a Big Sky Conference road trip at Northern Arizona in Flagstaff on Thursday at 6 p.m. tip Montana time. You can find it on ESPN Plus. And then at Portland State Saturday night, and that's at 8 p.m. local time tip, and you can find that also on ESPN Plus as well as the Bobcat Radio Network, as always. And Coach, what's the turnaround like, and what's the prep like for Portland State? Because Portland State played such a high tempo and high pressure style under Barrett Peary. I've watched them probably less than any team in the league because they've had more postponements than anybody. So how's the style different, and what's the turnaround like when you go from a team like NAU to a team like Portland State?
Yeah, I mean, they play similar. They probably don't press as much as they did with Coach Perry, but they will pressure you in the half court. They still try and get out and deny. They will still press at times, but just not, with Coach Perry, I mean, they were pressing you every time. Made, missed, it didn't matter. They were just running and jumping and playing frantic. And, this year they're playing, similar in the half court. Like they'll switch everything 1 through 5. They still got pretty much the same team they did last year, except they added some really good talented players. And so, it's going to be a challenge, but, you kind of mentioned that's what's fun about this league is every team plays so different. And so every game is almost a completely different game plan, and your guys have to be able to adjust and really a lot of times adjust on the fly and during the game.
He's Dave Sprinkle. He joins us once a week here on Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, as well as SWX Montana Television. Bobcat basketball at Northern Arizona, at Portland State this weekend. Coach, we appreciate the time as always, and best of luck this weekend. Best of luck with the what's going to be quite a challenging schedule down the stretch, but best of luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Go Cats, man. Appreciate you having me on.
So there you go, Montana State head men's basketball coach Danny Sprinkle. We'll hear from Grizz sophomore rising guard Robbie Beasley tomorrow for our Grizz Star of the Week. Also talk some Grizz hoops to take you home. That was our Montana State Minute, which is presented in part by Jake Dubeck, your Montana realtor. If you're in any sort of real estate bind or you need any sort of real estate advice in and around the Helena area, Jake Dubeck's your man. Jake Dubeck, proud to sponsor the Montana State Minute. Grizz hoops, where we have with Montana, I think that they have an opportunity, at least, to take a step back to the ranks of the elites in the Big Sky Conference. Why? We'll tell you more right here on ESPN Radio. Keep it right here. Nuanez Now.
Introducing Sportsbet Montana, powered by the Montana Lottery. Join in the excitement of Sportsbet Montana by betting on your favorite sports and teams, both collegiate and professional, including NFL, NBA, MLB, MMA, NASCAR, and more. There are multiple ways to bet, including in-game, which gets you in on the action live as the game unfolds, and parlay betting, where you have the chance to win big. Sportsbet Montana is secure and interactive. Learn more at sportsbetmontana.com.
We know you have a lot of options when it comes to choosing a bank, but here's something to remember. Farmer State Bank has been helping Montana families succeed since 1907. Seriously, 1907. They're not some out-of-state mega bank. Farmer State Bank grew up right here. And whether you're looking for a personal loan, a mortgage, or a business loan, they're here for you. Approachable, experienced, local. Choose Farmer State Bank, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Montana brings a variety of reasons to get outdoors. Gear up at Bob Ward's Sports and Outdoors, Montana's largest sporting goods retailer. For over 105 years, Bob Ward's has been committed to providing outstanding customer service, merchandise selection, and value. Bob Ward's has every brand and everything you need to run, climb, hunt, hike, camp, fish, ski, paddle, everything you do outdoors. Open 7 days a week in Missoula, Bozeman, Butte, Helena, and Hamilton. Or online 24/7 at bobwards.com. Gear up at Bob Ward's, a Montana tradition of adventure since 1917.
Florence Coffee Chai satisfies just right when the winter months come to Montana. Black tea with spices, steamed milk, and a touch of sweet combine into a soothing, full-bodied blend. Whether it's spiced, vanilla, chocolate, apple, or even no sugar-added vanilla, we have a chai waiting for you at any Florence Coffee location. And be sure to visit us at florencecoffeeco.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Lawrence Coffee Company.
Runners to your mark. Set.
Some may see a sprinter. At the NFHS, we see a future leader already off to the races. Some may see a volleyball player.
Good hit! Way to go, girls! Woo!
At the NFHS, we see a spike in confidence that will help her achieve her potential. What else do we see? Musicians learning to march to their own beat. We're the NFHS, the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and activities in America, helping today's teenagers develop the skills they need to become tomorrow's leaders. And we see it happening in communities across Montana every single day. Learn more about the NFHS commitment to youth at nfhs.org. This message presented by the NFHS, the National Federation of State High School Associations.
It's Nuanez now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula. Watch the show statewide on SWX Montana Television.
Show me the power, child. I'd like to say that I'm down on my knees today. Yeah, it gives me the butterflies, gives me away till I'm up on my feet again. Hey, I'm feeling
Oh, baby, little Soundgarden for you here on a Tuesday. Appreciate you spending some time with us. It's Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. It's time now for the final word, presented by Eagle Satellite. Have you heard about the great prices on TV and internet that Eagle Satellite is offering? They have TV packages starting at just $57.99 with free installation and internet for just $50 a month. Eagle Satellite, locally owned and operated, and they've been best serving Montana for more than 40 years. Couple minutes left here on the show. If you missed anything in the show, you can always find it on the Nuanez Now podcast, which is probably presented by Sportsbet Montana. A couple thoughts on Montana, the University of Montana men's basketball team. When I first moved back to Missoula, that was the hottest ticket in town, and they had an unbelievably fun roster with some of my favorite guys I've covered in the Big Sky, guys like Michael Ogine and Bobby Moorhead and Ahmad Rory, guys that were not only great players, but also really fun to be around and hang out with and cover and interview and chronicle their careers. And Montana has had a little bit of overturn of the roster in this quote-unquote rebuild. Montana never really has to rebuild fully, though. They're always going to be right there in the mix, especially in tournament time, because Travis DeCure is a tremendous coach, but he's particularly good in single-game elimination tournaments like the neutral site tournament in Boise for the Big Sky tournament. That said, though, their style was the style plus the absence of fans last year, plus the fact that so many of the guys on the team were still acclimating to Missoula, to the Big Sky, to life in Montana, all that, made for last year to be a pretty trying year to cover. They were not in the best of moods all the time, and it was, even when they would win, it was not very fluid or appealing in its aesthetic appeal. And so this year, though, they've looked a little better. I was able to go to their last 2 home games against Idaho State and Weber State, and they were a little bit looser. It seems like the role definition is sort of falling into place, at least early on here in the Big Sky schedule. Some of the main things that they continue to hang their hat on that they always have for years and years and years, particularly under Coach DeCure, but just across the board. Number one, defense. They're leading the league in scoring defense by a wide margin. They're giving up 6 points per game less than Portland State or Montana State. So just 62 points per game for the Grizz. That's pretty darn good. That's definitely right up there among the national leaders, not just leading in the Big Sky Conference. And so that they continue to hang their hat on that element of it. But I do think that they're coming around in terms of solidifying and settling in what they want their team to be. I do think that Josh Bannon has really established himself as a vocal and a physical leader for the team. They need that because the defense that they play, they need that power forward guy, that athletic post, to be sort of a director of traffic as well as a rim protector, as well as a guy who can hard hedge on the high ball screens. And Bannon's really coming into his own. I think that they have a lot of respect for him. His teammates do. Also, the thing that has really kind of opened it up for Montana the last couple weeks has been moving Robbie Beasley onto the ball more often. And sometimes taking the ball out of the hands of a guy like Cam Parker can be detrimental, but they're doing it in an almost an NBA style in that when Parker's in the game and he plays off the ball and Beasley plays on the ball, a lot of times they're running extended transitions, extended fast breaks, or some ISO stuff for Beasley. And then if he can't get into it quickly or they can't get into a set quickly, they pull it back out, and Cam Parker then operates from the wing, and then he's essentially then the point guard in that set, and now Beasley can play out the ball. So pretty intricate but pretty fun to watch. And I think that's, to me, and in my opinion, I think the Grizz have done a good job of stockpiling some talent, but they have a lot of guys that are sort of like talents right now in the league. So somebody or a few guys sort of distancing themselves and taking the reins and being the guys has been essential. It's been something that Travis DeCure has talked about extensively. And I think that they have 3 guys that needs to be those guys. And I think it needs to be Beasley, Bannon, and Parker. And then I think that everybody else can sort of fall into line. Mac Anderson's going to give you some energy minutes if he can stay out of foul trouble, although he's had a hell of a time doing that throughout his career, especially this year. Derek Carter-Hollinger is also going to give you some energy and some bounce. Lionel Martin, I think, is a solid rotation guy, a junior college guy. And then who else can rise up? Out of Brandon Whitney and Josh Vasquez and Kyle Owens, those 3 guys are kind of fighting for the one spot in the rotation as this thing continues to evolve. So we'll see. But Montana back in action on the road this weekend. They play at Portland State on Thursday and at Northern Arizona on Saturday. So should be a fun one. Those should be fun and interesting tests for the Grizzlies as well. Thanks so much for being with us here on Tuesday. We'll be back at it. Wednesday, our ESPN Roundtable features an old friend of mine and a guy that knows a ton about football, a very familiar name here in the Treasure State, Jerome Sowers, longtime defensive coordinator for the Grizzlies, longtime Northern Arizona head coach, and now the new head coach for Montana State Northern. He'll join us. We also have Robbie Beasley, speaking of, from the Grizz basketball team. And we'll hear from Alex Eshelman from SWX Montana Television. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you back here 4 o'clock. Nuanez now.
Paul Ryan is a name that's been